Welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most interesting topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 190th edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it is our 645th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of Thursday, October 8th, 2020. I am your host, Brian Tonsoni. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Smart takes the shot.
Oh, we're the national championship.
If you want something basketball related, the Maui Bracket is out, and we'll be talking about that. Getting to participate in this tournament early in the season and hopefully experiencing some success. Thanks to the roster continuity will be great for building a winning mentality in a tournament environment and adding important wins to the resume for a trip to the NCAA tournament. But if you want to know the real banner moment, it's Johnny Jager getting engaged. Jager is a grad assistant for Indiana now. After being a walk-on under Archie Miller, he tweeted out pictures of his proposal, which took place in front of Assembly Hall. Congrats to Johnny, and we wish the newly engaged couple a lifetime of happiness and hopefully many more happy memories at Assembly Hall. Okay, now let me introduce my esteemed co-host for this week's show. First to my left.
You'll have fun. Fun. Fun.
Andy, what is your bottom line on the last week in IU basketball?
Well, like you said, getting the Maui bracket gives us some potential matchups to talk through, which is good. And so we'll spend some time on that, talking scheduling stuff later. And as I forget which league it was, came out with their schedule this week. It makes me wonder when the Big Ten will come out with theirs, but we'll have to wait for that for another little while. A couple things this week that are related to IU basketball, but not necessarily like this season's team. As much on the 5th, which I think was Monday, Zach Osterman tweeted out, IU announced that 10 programs, including the men's basketball, women's basketball, football, and football teams have 100% of their student athletes registered to vote, which is awesome to see, and seeing them really encourage kids to get involved in the process and all the movement around voting and getting people registered. I thought that was great to see. And then another one, Marnie Mooney, although her last name now I think is Moonye. I may be butchering that, but anyway, her little guy had a heart surgery at Riley this week. So I know I've been following some of that with, her posts on Twitter and Facebook. Seems like all things have gone as well as can be expected at this point. And so, continued thoughts and prayers to their Max, who is seems like he's been through a lot in a short period of time, but definitely seems to be a fighter for sure. So good news on that front, and somebody who played a really pivotal role in some of those the best seasons of the Crean era. She was right there from an academic standpoint, doing great things. So continued thoughts with her and the family.
Absolutely. We hope Marnie and her family and the little guy are doing as well as they possibly can. Marnie was a big influence on my youngest son, who school was a little difficult at times, but when she was helping the IU athletes, he read an article about her work, and it was really motivated to put together a plan, and now he's a college graduate. So we thank Marnie for her inspiration from afar. In helping our son find a way to get things done. So, and now to my right.
Analyzing players, finding every wrinkle. He hasn't ever hosted, never lifted a finger. He's got all the answers.
Well, let me quickly add just one thing about this.
Dude just interrupted his own jingle.
Ryan, what is your rant on the last week in IU sports?
Well, I can definitely tell you two groups that will not be going to Maui this year. One is the Indiana basketball Hoosiers, and the other is the Phillips family. We have decided not to trek to Maui, even though the tournament isn't there. We were still planning on maybe going out there, having a nice Thanksgiving, but the regulations in Hawaii would have made it so we would have had to stay in our rooms for 3 days after we got there. And it's, why are we paying to be in Hawaii if we can't be outside? So we have backtracked on that after I bragged about still going for a while. So have at it, guys. You can rip me all you want. But one thing I did want to say is I think that the people at the Maui Invitational should invite the teams that are in this year's tournament back for 2022. I think that would be fair, because going to Asheville, while I'm sure it's lovely, is not the same as going to Maui. And I still stand by that. They should get the experience of going out to the islands, and that fan base should get that. And yeah, I mean, that's just, it seems like an obvious thing to do. We're all dealing with craziness this year. Let's reset button. Yeah, go have fun in Asheville, but for real, we're going to send you to the actual Maui Invitational. I think that'd be the right thing to do. I also, as we'll get into, I think the bracket for the Maui Invitational turned out pretty great for Indiana, and I'm pretty excited about that. I mean, why are we still calling it the Maui Invitational? It's the Asheville Invitational now. What are we doing? Maui has nothing to do with it. So the Asheville Invitational, as I will now be calling it, it looks like IU got a pretty good draw, and I'm excited about it.
We're still going to have to wear some Hawaiian gear that day, maybe, or North Carolina. Nah, we won't talk about that.
No.
We'll just come on the post-game show and hope for 3 wins, but we will be talking about that in segment 2. And as well as that, we're going to talk about another Hoosier who's getting his chance to play professional ball, that important scheduling news that came out, and of course, as usual, our listener questions. All of that coming up this week here on Assembly Call Radio. But before we get to all of that, a quick announcement. Please continue to support our friends at Homefield at homefieldapparel.com/assembly20. Just some incredible work being done with their big new Saturday additions with new shirts and new stuff. Go there and check out their gear. Put a lot in the cart and hit purchase, and you'll be very satisfied with what you receive. Mostly IU gear. Buy all the IU gear first, and then branch out and get your other teams of interest. But here's our Hoosier headlines. Deron Davis signed a pro contract with, I'll try to pronounce this correct, Colester Basketball Club in Dublin. Close part of the Super League, the top division in Ireland. And via Taylor Talkman of Inside the Hall, the Super League doesn't get a whole lot of attention from NBA scouts. However, it does provide an opportunity to move into other leagues that act as the springboard to the G League. So Davis' contract has a buyout, so he can progress to another organization if he plays well and opportunity arises. Devontae Green is playing in Greece. And the question is, guys, who do you think will have a better pro career overseas right now and in the future?
I think Devontae fits in the European model really well. The way he plays offense, very free and, just willing to take shots at any point. I think Duran's a little slower, and they play a more up-tempo game over there from time, in most cases. I think Devontae, if he can learn to be at all consistent, which we didn't see in 4 years at Indiana, but if he can learn to be at all consistent, he can be a guy that makes a lot of money over there and scores a lot of points over there, because he's not going to get contested on shots. If he's open and he can find consistency from deep, and also be a guy who can move into the paint and distribute from inside the paint or make shots, he could have a pretty nice career over there. We've seen guys of his type going, maybe a little more consistent than him, but guys of his type go over and have success in Europe, and I think he can.
Yeah, I would lean Devontae with the question, although I'm curious to see what Duran's able to do. Listening to his interview with the Hoosier Hysterics, whenever that, I think it was sometime over the summer, came out, where he was, trying to get back into, the player that he really was in high school, and the injuries, and I think was frustrated by some of the opportunities that he may have wanted but didn't get at times during his IU career, and being able to step out and shoot a little bit more, and some of the things that really made him rated where he was from a recruiting standpoint. So, hopefully things work well for him and he can get established, stay healthy, and maybe be able to move his way up there. But yeah, I think Devontae, just from a scoring perspective, is a guy who can, fit in and do that. It just becomes a matter of whether he can start to, weed out some of the plays that we all were frustrated with at various times over the course of his career, and get in a system that is able to complement what he likes to do and what he does well.
Yeah, I think Devontae has the natural ability to play well early and play longer from the perimeter. But Duran's passing ability can be utilized by teams, and the thing that's really nice for these guys too is, you get to make some pretty good money playing the game that you grew up in college that you love, and even if you can just stretch it out for a few years, you get a good start to your post-college income level by playing basketball. And then the other thing that is so great for these guys is, too, you get to go see parts of the world that you normally might not go see. And I know it's probably every job is a grind at times, and playing over in those leagues has its difficulties too. But you just feel good for a guy like Duran that's able to sign and have an attempt to play. And if he can find that healthy return to what he was, then he has a chance to play for a few years and make some money playing the game of basketball. So we wish Duran Davis well, and the same with Devontae, and look forward to seeing their results from overseas. The other thing that I was going to bring up here in our opening segment is saw something pop up about Christian Lander putting on weight up in the upper 180s. The concern with him reclassifying and coming a year early has been documented, will be talked about a lot. Reading publications like the Three Man Weave, they're high on him, but then cautious about people like Ashton Hagans, who did not necessarily come in and set the world on fire in a similar situation. How much of his game is going to be what he's normally doing, or is it a mental adjustment, or is this physical size? Was his physical size the concern? Ryan, him weighing at 187, is that a good sign, or just a sign of what most college kids do when they join a program with a guy like Cliff Marshall?
Yeah, I think it's a good sign. I think 195 is about where I had hoped that he would get to. If that was a lot of weight to gain, though. That was the pie in the sky, 195, 200, somewhere in there. And, he's starting to get there. And here's what I'll say about, the Hagans comparison, which I've heard as well, like, people discussing Hagans and Lander. If you're expecting Lander to come in and start and score and play 27 minutes a game and lead from the front, you're expecting the wrong things from a young guy. He's going to come in and hopefully ignite the second unit and then play with the starters some. I think that's your best case scenario, is a guy who comes in and is, a fast, engaged guy who can really get this team moving, but who isn't going to shoulder a huge load given the veterans on the team around him. And so, yeah, I think the size was the biggest issue for me, but yeah, there are some concerns about mentality when you're that young, always. And, you have that question about mentality when it's a freshman who has graduated his normal 4 years in high school and comes in. It's even more pronounced when it's a younger guy, but he's a kid who's been on the national level for a while at these AAU tournaments. He's played against the best competition. He's going to come in with some, this isn't like an underage freshman coming in, 15 years ago. It's a little bit different. So we'll see. I just think that it depends on what you're expecting from him. If you're expecting him to be, sort of a spark plug who can play 20 minutes, maybe max, then yeah, I think that you can expect that. But if you're expecting him to come in and light the world on fire immediately, that's probably too much to ask.
Any thoughts on him putting on some solid muscle and weight here early in his career?
I mean, I think it's something that's necessary at the very least. It'll be a question at some point of, him getting used to play at a little bit higher weight, but it's doing what they can to get him prepared for the physicality of the Big Ten. When you think about, we're going to talk schedule later, but you're playing at this point probably 25 games at a minimum against high major competition. So you've got to get ready for that. So how that works out for him is you don't really know. But I think it's a positive sign of what you would expect from there. And it's just a matter of how well his play translates. And yeah, another guy that I was thinking of, and I was trying to do a little bit of research while we were here, is I think that Kyrie Lewis enrolled early at Alabama as well. And he, really got the keys and got a lot more playing time. He averaged over nearly 32 minutes a game as a freshman, but scored 13.5 points. He was also asked to do a great deal and use a lot of possessions and things like that for that team. But it was another guy kind of stepping into a point guard role. So Hagans, I think, is the one that gets a lot of the discussion. But I mean, in Lewis, if my memory serves correctly, that he did reclassify and enroll early. I think there's somewhat of a blueprint, but like Ryan said, I think it will be a slow build up to a larger role, which they're able to do this year because of having some veteran guys in the backcourt. And that's, as you look forward to the season and think things like that, you are excited to know that the top rated newcomer is not being asked to carry a big load early on, which was not the case with Romeo, which was not the case with Trace last year. So I think it all in all makes it a good situation for him. That remains to be seen how he takes advantage of that and how he responds to it. But I think the weight piece is just a portion of getting him ready to play and build for the long haul and get him into a more expanded role by the time the end of the Big Ten season rolls around.
I would love for him to just be a supercharger for the second unit. You know what I mean? When you get those bench guys in there, just run, and get up fast and find. I mean, even if you have turnovers, if you whatever, to get other teams out of their rhythm by going fast. I think that's something Indiana hasn't had in a while.
The pace is important for me as well. I agree with you, Ryan. I do think it's somewhere between that second unit motivation push and that 27, 28 minutes would be my ideal role for him. But you're right, he has to grow into that. And I think the weights were the big concern of mine. I think playing at the Olympic trials and playing in the AAU, playing up, I think his mentality of knowing the game is more advanced than someone who is just with his regular class. And yet the college game is still a learning process, regardless of how good you are when you come in as a player. But the weight was much needed. And one more question, kind of follow up on our discussion last week, that you saw at the top 25 of the players from the inside the hall and Dylan Burkett, you saw some transfers. And the difference between a grad transfer coming in and not having a year in a system versus a regular transfer having a year in a system, is there a difference in the expectations of these guys that we see in other programs? My quick belief is that grad transfer adds some depth and can play like Proctor at Purdue, but it's not going to. It's hard for them to come in and be dominant unless they are maybe transferring in from another Power 5 conference. But when you transfer up, I think it takes a little time to adjust. It doesn't mean you won't make the team better, but sometimes I look at when these transfers get in the top 20, 25 of the conference because of what they've done at other places. I think the Big Ten is a big learning process, and we've seen it at IU that the graduate transfers haven't always been what we thought they've been. Andy, your thoughts real quick on the impact of some of these transfers that we don't quite know about that have moved into the Big Ten at other schools.
Yeah, I think this season is going to put that even more in focus as you do that. Yeah, you've had some other time and you've had maybe more time because the season's going to start a little bit later, but your actual practices aren't starting till later. And most of these schools, again, you get into the scheduling, there's not going to be a lot of those ramp up games to really let guys get warmed up and sort through roles and do different things like that. You're just not going to have that because of the schedule getting scaled back. So I do think it's a lot to expect. And you do a couple of the teams that IU might face in Asheville. Almost said Maui, Ryan, but I didn't.
It's Asheville.
There's Providence has kind of one of each. They've got a grad transfer guy and they got one that's sitting out. I think it's all hard to piece it all together and sort through roles. And I just think the little bit shortened practice schedule and the lack of exhibition games, the lack of secret scrimmages, the lack of kind of cupcake games for a lot of people are going to make that really difficult. And unless you're coming from a fairly similar system and really be able to integrate yourself easily, I think there's going to be some bumps in the road for guys like that.
Yeah, I think that if it's a post guy and he's just going to be playing the post, I think you can be successful, have a better chance of being successful as a grad transfer. Point guards, you got to learn the offense. You got to learn the tendencies of all your teammates. You got to learn all that. So it's really hard. And wing guys, it depends what they do. If they're just shooters and just have to come off screens, the more simplified their role is, I think, is how you can be better. If you simplify the role for that person, if you make it complex, it is tough to come in and make an impact right away because it's all new, like you said, just like a freshman coming in.
Okay, coming up, we've got some important scheduling news that came out this week about both the Asheville Invitational, formerly known as the Maui, and the Gavitt Games. We'll discuss how it affects Indiana, so stick with us. All right, segment 1. Good job, fellas.
Oh man, I'm watching the Padres face Dustin May, and I can't stand it. He throws 101 with movement. He's killed us this year. 100.
Like
you just
last
hit
week,
101.
The Padres really turned things around after you got off the show. So
I know.
Yeah, last week.
Let's get this over with. Yeah, I will say, guys, last night was one of the best baseball games I've ever seen, and we lost. And Bellinger going over the fence to rob that home run, man, that was like a punch in the gut. But it was, it was amazing. You can't say anything about that. Hang on, I'm gonna turn on the lights. All right, Tatis.
Hello, chat mob. How we doing in there?
Just because it's darker in here.
Hope everyone's doing all right. Dominic says IU North Carolina Asheville final. I'd be up for that. And when we talk, boy, the times really stink for me for the tournament. Right in the middle of school day and then basketball practice right after school. So
yeah, I didn't even look. 2:30. Although working from home, if I just carve out so that nobody schedules any meetings. That's what I did with the Reds game. So let's hope this works out a little bit better than that did. Yeah. So if they win, then it's one. If they win, then it's 1:30 for the second round.
Oh, yep.
And if they're in the final, then it's 4:00.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not great. Not great.
What's going on? I'm sorry, I missed.
We were just talking about the times
of the
for
Asheville Classic.
Now now if you figured in the other way, where it's like if it was in Maui and then they might be playing at 11, then that would maybe be equally not ideal.
What I don't like about Maui anymore is they don't make the final game of the tournament the championship game.
Yeah,
I don't like that. They used to do that. Now they wanted to put it at 4:00 Eastern.
Yeah, now it's the final game is the seventh place game. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the consolation game, which is 5th place.
Yeah,
plays after the championship. It's dumb. I don't know why they do that. They changed that a couple years ago, like 3 years ago.
Yeah, that is weird.
I think it should be the night closer.
We went about 20 minutes that first segment, so we don't have to go super long on this. But the Gavitt Games obviously being canceled, which leaves Indiana
That's a
5
help,
games. Yeah, I do.
Who are they going to play?
3 in the Maui. Who were they going to play?
Do we know? Yeah, it had been announced.
I don't think it was announced who they were going to play.
Yeah, they didn't have any of the matchups out for any of that stuff. I don't believe.
I wasn't sure. And then we still don't know ACC, do we?
No, they haven't announced the matchups.
I'd imagine
but they do still
one of the top 6 schools.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard they intend to do it, so I would imagine it'd be. Yeah, I don't know who. I don't know if they'd get a return date at Florida State. I don't know that would really make a ton of sense. But they wouldn't. It probably wouldn't be Carolina, since there's a chance they would play in Maui. Duke's up there. I'm trying to think who else is supposed to be good.
Illinois and Duke are probably matched up, or Wisconsin and Iowa. Those 3 are going to play the top 3.
Yeah.
Plus Michigan State. So we're looking at the 5th, 16 maybe.
Who would it be? Like
kind of
NC
rank
State?
them. Miami, I saw someone say.
Yeah, I was gonna say Louisville's probably up there, but I don't know that they would.
We played Florida State last year, so probably not them again.
And then I saw someone too say they might try to get it somewhat as regional, like Louisville will play us or Notre Dame because it's closer. With the travel stuff. I don't know.
Sense.
I mean,
they're not going to be able to do it that great because a lot of the schools are so far away.
Yeah,
you got Indiana,
Louisville you
Notre
could
Dame,
do.
Louisville,
They're probably in. Yeah, I was just looking at like the 3-man weave, the way they got it tiered out. They got Virginia and Duke at the top, then Carolina, Louisville, Florida State kind of in the next tier. So if you want to do the regional part, the problem is like there's only so many that you can do regionally, and everybody else is going someplace else. Yeah, and then like you kind of get
if you want to
Miami,
do it
Virginia Tech, whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I would imagine
Virginia and Maryland, and put Rutgers down in North Carolina somewhere. I mean, that's
but I don't think but like Maryland's supposed to be so bad, they wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
So
no, I'm just saying if you're doing it, the closest schools together.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know who you give Nebraska. I guess Notre Dame. I don't know. That's the farthest west one, I believe.
Wake Forest.
Have they canceled Crossroads yet?
No, I think they're planning on playing
that. We play Butler.
They're still going to have
right?
it. Yeah.
Yep.
But last year was Notre Dame.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's get into
All right,
this.
we ready to roll?
Sure.
All right. Let me get this set here. All right, here we go.
Hi, this is Jawan Morgan. What's the only thing better than getting IU's first triple-double in 47 years? Celebrating it with friends afterwards. Join Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the assembly call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
Welcome back to the Assembly Call. You can find all of our content at our website, assemblycall.com. And if you ever want to join the chat mob during our unedited live broadcasts or watch those replays and see all the in-between segment banter, then check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/assemblycall. I'm Coach Brian Tonsoni. I'm here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips, and we're going to talk scheduling. This week, some scheduling news came out on the downside, I guess, if you will. The Gavitt Games have been canceled, but as we were talking in the break, that might be beneficial in a four-game shortened NCAA season. And to remind everyone, the NCAA is now allowing 27 games if you play in a multi-team event. And so they canceled that. And then the Maui Bracket came out, which is now the Asheville Bracket. And we will refer to it. You're welcome. And so Indiana drew Providence in Game 2 and will play either Texas or Davidson, who play in Game 1, depending on who wins and who loses. The other side of the bracket is North Carolina versus UNLV in Game 3 and Stanford versus Alabama in Game 4. Fellas, as you look at that just generally, your thoughts on the draw for Indiana and the draw for the Asheville Classic altogether?
It sets up really nicely for Indiana to be on the opposite side of the bracket from North Carolina. I think obviously what they would love to happen is for Indiana and North Carolina, the teams with the two biggest basketball fan bases and best traditions, to wind up in the final together. And so whether or not that happens, I mean, we'll see. But it basically is, that's the way it's setting up, or they set it up. So we'll see. I don't know. What do you guys know about Providence next year? Anything?
Yeah, I looked through a little bit because I've started putting some stuff together. So, they lose two of their top three scorers, and they're breaking in a couple transfers, as I mentioned before. So there's one a guy that was there and sat out last year, and there's another one that's a grad transfer. So, they're going to be integrating some new pieces. This is going to be really early in the season, so you might catch them at a pretty good time. From a defensive perspective, they're really strong. I really like Ed Cooley as a coach. He always is somebody who seems to get the most out of his guys. And so they're, dependent upon where you look, ranked mostly in the 30s of anything that I've seen. I think three-man we've had them just outside their top 40, but really close. So I think a defensive battle probably there. And then if you win that and play Texas, that will assuredly be a defensive battle when you go against them. They got a lot of size. Torvik has Texas ranked second because they bring everybody back. Plus they add I think the number 2 power forward in the country, according to 247. So they were horrific offensively in Big 12 play, and that's been kind of a standard attribute of the Texas teams lately, but definitely really good defensively. So IU is, I would say, outside of Davidson, that side of the bracket is heavy on the defense, and will provide some good tests. But I think if you win that first game, and Coach and I talked about this before, you set yourself up to get 2 other really good games, almost no matter who you play. Versus if you lose that one, you probably end up playing Davidson in the second one, and then things get weird, and you may end up not getting as many high-level games, and losing to a Texas even in the second round isn't going to kill you when you start looking at tournament resumes and things like that.
And speaking of Texas, we are proud to have joining us from the great state of Texas, Jared Morris has popped in to talk a little bit of the Asheville Classic. Jared, welcome to the show.
Ryan scoffs at the Asheville Invitational, but it brings Gerard out of the woodwork to come and talk some Asheville Invitational.
I was just playing a little Zoom roulette tonight and ended up here. What do you guys discuss on this show? I'm not familiar with it.
You've never been here before? You're a little rusty.
First time. First
Well, it's
time.
surprising you're wearing an Indiana shirt. Amazingly, you wound up here.
It's incredible luck. It truly is. Are they calling it the Asheville Classic?
No, I'm calling it that.
That's what you're calling it.
Why are we
Okay.
referring it to as the Maui Invitational anymore? I mean, it's not Maui.
Just a 1 year blip, you know?
Yeah, of course. The year I was supposed to go again.
Is there a beach in Asheville?
No.
No, so it's got to.
No, it's more
Vanderbilt
in,
State is nearby. I'm sure they have a beach. They have everything else.
So, Jared, your thoughts as you saw this the bracket come out for the Maui/Asheville Classic?
I mean, my first thought was that it was just nice to see a bracket that, you know, hopefully is going to get played. You know, probably won't believe that until it actually happens, but it's nice to actually have a bracket to talk about. I mean, I think it sets up about as well as it could. I mean, your first game is against Providence, which is certainly a team that you should and perhaps could, you know, or could and perhaps should beat. But that's a quality game, you know, right off the bat. And then, as you guys said, if you win that, you really set yourself up nicely. I mean, Texas is obviously going to be highly regarded, and then whoever comes out the other side. So, you know, I think probably most Indiana fans have maybe been conditioned to just kind of expect something bad to happen in this tournament, just because of what happened the last time we were in Maui and just some of the, you know, the early season missteps that we've had. But I mean, if we're able to go there and our continuity, you know, from bringing a lot of the same guys back, you know, really allows us to get off to a strong start this season. I mean, it's a huge opportunity to really lock up some big resume building wins in a season when those are going to be at a premium, especially in the non-conference. So, you know, I mean, it all just depends on what they actually do once they get there. But just looking at the bracket, it doesn't really seem like you could ask for anything more.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that, besides the game itself, you play three quality opponents the way it's set up here. Obviously, you'd want to win and advance to Texas and build your resume that way. But, you know, there's a lot of good from playing those three games early in the season with your team. Interesting to get each of your perspective on what kind of teams have success. Is it veteran teams in a 3-day MTE? Is it the talented teams? Is it, you know, 3 days in a row of shooting? What do you guys think is the main type of characteristic that teams show when they win some of these fields that are as quality as the Maui Classic has been?
Do we have anybody here with experience, like seeing Maui and seeing how those games go?
I don't know. You guys ever been? No, honestly, every year, one of the teams that makes it to the finals is a veteran team that knows each other, that knows the offense, that knows the defense, you know, like a solid team that's been together. I think at Notre Dame, the last time I was there, made the finals against Duke, and they played together. They had a couple shooters. They played really hard, and Duke was the uber talented team. That was Zion's freshman year with R.J. Barrett and all those guys. So it was a real clash of a veteran team that had been together, that knew the program and knew everything, and the super talented team. That usually happens because it's early in the season. Everybody's a little relaxed because you're in Maui. Not this year. You're going to be in Asheville, but everybody is just kind of relaxed and kind of easing into the season. And look, if you lose 3 games in Maui, it's not good, but it's not going to sink your season. So there's kind of like a relaxed atmosphere, but then once the games tip off, it's intense. But I would say that it's not like a March Madness atmosphere until you get to that final. And so the teams that succeed are the ones that know the stakes of winning every day. And so I think that veteran teams tend to do better. And of course, if you have a star, you know, stars shine at Maui every time. I remember Kemba Walker dragged UConn to a title there, and then later in the year dragged them to a national championship. But when that season started, those guys who showed up in that championship run weren't very good at the beginning of the year. They were okay, but they hadn't, you know, played together very much and hadn't risen to that next level. So I think a star-driven team, a team that knows what it is, knows its identity, and has played together for a while. And then, yeah, the talent, you know, is always going to be tough to beat in college basketball.
Andy, we were talking before the show about how do you, we as bracketologists, look at these 3 games in a row, because there's never a time when you're going to play 3 games in a row from a scouting perspective, from a lack of practice perspective, that the wins count a little bit more because they're wins on the court. The losses, you kind of understand there's some other things that are going on that may cause you to lose a game that you wouldn't necessarily with time. Again, do you think that plays into what type of teams, you know, can win back to back to back? And is it a sign if your team doesn't come out with 2 or 3 wins that that maybe you're not as good as you thought.
Well, as we learned a few years ago with IU, I guess maybe it doesn't matter if you don't play all that well there. But I think from a bracketology perspective, I always go back to the first game is so important, and I would tend to, when I had more time than I probably do now, look at a lot of these teams that maybe their non-conference schedule isn't very good except for getting into one of these events. And if you stub your toe in the first one and set yourself up into the consolation side of the bracket, sometimes you don't get the opportunities that you hoped you would get. So I think the first game becomes pretty critical, and then the others are not gravy, but they kind of can be. I mean, again, if you lose to Texas, that other game, it's not the end of the world. And then maybe you face a Stanford or Alabama, even in the third and fourth place game. If you get in that scenario, both those teams, while aren't going to challenge for their leagues, are going to be in tournament contention and wouldn't be a bad loss, but would give you something to fall back on if you would win. So I think that first game just becomes incredibly important. If you can get that one, then you set yourself up to really not have anything to lose the rest of the way. And I think depth becomes important in a lot of those scenarios as well. Ryan talked about the veteran presence of some of these, but being able to, get some minutes out of guys early on that give your guys a chance to rest, because as you said, there's very little else that happens over the course of the season that's going to be anything similar to playing 3 games in 3 days. So you get to the point where we see that in Maui at times, that guys really start like cramping up in the last game and things like that, where they're especially just early exhausted from playing. And because it's, usually in the season, you've got a couple weeks where at least teams can play, maybe it's only 3 games, but at least you've played a few games, and it hits pretty early this year. If the season can start on the 25th or whatever, like you may have one game, these teams may have one game under their belt by the time they get there and not have played exhibitions and stuff like that.
In line with what Andy's saying, the other thing in a short tournament like that, a 3-day tournament, you can see teams have massive hangovers from a day one loss and just blow out of the tournament, backwards. And it's,
you don't say. I'm not familiar with the team doing that.
Yeah, exactly. But it's so there can be a hangover if you lose that first game, especially even if you lose it in a tight game that was competitive. The letdown of that, then less than 24 hours later, you got to pump yourself up to play another game against what's probably going to be a decent quality opponent at a tournament like this. And if you're not up and ready to go, I mean, I've seen some of those consolation bracket games in Maui just be ugly because both teams suffered devastating losses and then less than 24 hours later had to play an early game, because they're in the consolation side. They play an early game and they don't want to be, it feels like they don't want to be there. And so that can happen. So you're right, Andy, winning that first game is incredibly important just to get the good feelings rolling.
I think it's going to be really important that Rob Finney play well, which is kind of an obvious statement, and he's going to need to play well all year. But, you need guys like Rob and Al to really step up, I think, in a tournament like this. Al, just to be able to make shots. I mean, in a short 3-day span, you have a few guys get hot shooting wise that can carry you through. And Al would obviously be that guy for Indiana, but I think, as is going to be a theme so often this year, Rob Finney on the offensive and defensive side, just his ability to be the catalyst on offense and then to kind of spearhead the defense is going to be big. And he's been a guy who's been inconsistent. And so I think for Indiana to win 3 games in a row in 3 days, you're going to have to get good Rob Finney, like really good Rob Finney, all 3 of those games, because, you're going to be playing top 30 teams, every one. And so I think, to me, I think that, and we'll see who they might play before then, but how Rob responds and is able to play, is his body back right? Is he able to play, 30 plus minutes, 3 games in a row? I think that, and then also what you see from Jerome in a situation like that, how limited are his minutes? How much is he able to go? So I think we'll learn, some of the guys who last year maybe had trouble, playing full games, or, we'd see some of those, kind of injuries crop up. Do they look different in this situation? I think that'll be really interesting to watch for early in the year.
One of the things that I think that I look at from Indiana's standpoint and playing in one of these early tournaments is that their best attribute right now is defense. And defense in a 3 days in a row, it's easier to find your defense 3 days in a row than your offense sometimes. Your offense can leave you. But if you are a defensive-minded team, and the other thing that I think is important is that this team tries to offensive rebound and does a decent job of offensive rebound. Every team's new, and you can't always predict this year from what's happened in the past. But, if you play at Texas, they got great size, and then they got the Gabe Brown, the big freshman coming in the top 10 freshmen, and North Carolina's got size. But if you can rebound both defensively and offensively, that's a hustle thing. And I think in these games 2 and 3, it becomes about attitude and hustle and getting those extra possessions that you need, because you might miss a shot in day 3 from being a little bit fatigued. And those are things that Indiana has done well. And if they bring that with them again this year, I think that bodes well. The thing is, Providence is that way too, defensive-minded. Texas has a lot of length. That whole top bracket, other than Davidson being the offensive team known for its offense, that seems like a defense and rebounding bracket from the top. But I think some of those things will play well for Indiana, as well as we hope to see the continued improvement from perimeter play and the new style offense.
Yeah, I think, I do think the defensive piece, a lot of times everybody will say, defense is ahead of your offense and different things like that. I think you'll see that, but I think there's going to be some absolute rock fights on the top part of that bracket, just people shaking the rust off and doing some of those things. But I do think the continuity piece helps IU in that scenario with the core guys who are going to get a lot of the minutes, having played together before. You would like to think you've got a little bit more of a veteran backcourt. That typically in tournament settings is a good thing. So we'll see what happens. I look forward to, like you said, I was just excited to see the bracket and have something to think about in terms of future opponents and figure out those kinds of things. So it's exciting. We hope it goes off without a hitch.
A couple more things in this segment. As you go forward, if we win the first game, beat Texas, who do you want to play? Do you want to play the best team in the bottom bracket, whoever you think that is, or do you want a team to maybe upset the best team in the bottom bracket so you have a chance of winning that third game? Your thoughts on who, if we can get to that third game championship, who you'd like to see from the bottom bracket?
Because we always beat North Carolina in the regular season. And just in case Trey Kaufman needs a reminder of where he should go to school.
No, I'm saying I want the easiest point, because I want to take home the one and only Asheville Invitational Championship. So whoever the easiest path is, because I want to bring that trophy home.
North Carolina. It's the regular season.
North Carolina.
That might be true. Yeah.
Carolina's interesting. They got a ton of freshmen that they're going to rely on. They do have Garrison Brooks, who's a really good big guy.
Bad last year.
Yeah. So, Garrison Brooks against TJD would be a really good matchup. And, again, you catch somebody early in the season where you still got young guys trying to play their way into roles. I wouldn't necessarily be shocked if maybe it's Alabama that can upset them. Stanford lost a guy to the NBA draft, so I'm not sure that they can probably do that. But, yeah, I think Carolina.
Yep, Stanford's been getting some attention though, despite the young man who graduated. They got they got Zaire Williams, who's like the #1 small forward, is the freshman on their team this year. Interesting. So. And from our vantage point, Andy, it's always do you want to play the top teams to build your strength of schedule, or just add wins. Right now, I'm an add win guy. I'm tired of losing. Let's just.
I think with the way this year's
worry
schedule,
about strength of schedule later. I think these teams. I think this Maui Classic is pretty strong.
I don't know, Coach. The what?
The Asheville Classic. My bad.
Thank you.
My bad. The Asheville Classic. I think it's pretty strong when you look at the Torvik rankings. There's 6 squads that are really above the other 2. And so you're going to play quality opponents no matter what. So let's go sweep it and come home with the Asheville trophy.
I want to play the best games. I want that championship game to be a primetime game that people talk about. Indiana, North Carolina would be that. And these are the types of games that we need to play to get the program back to being prominent. So I don't care about easy paths. I don't care about any of that stuff.
But they play it at 4:00 in the afternoon. That marquee matchup is
I hate that.
Right, is 4:00 in the afternoon on a Wednesday.
It should be the championship game should be the last game of a tournament. It shouldn't be in the middle of the day. Make that the nightcap on ESPN like it used to be.
Why did they do that?
They did it a couple of years ago. They changed it, and I think it had to do with the broadcast teams getting them out of there earlier, and getting it on the air in what was a desirable time, I guess.
I think travel. It's
a broadcast teams out there.
Well, I think it's
the
also
broadcast teams have to go to the next tournament. One year it was they had to go up to Phil Knight's tournament in Oregon, that birthday tournament for him. And so they had to fly out like in the middle. As soon as the game was over, they packed up the number one team was Billis and I forget who, Schulman, I think. And they had to pack up and leave immediately as soon as it was over to get there on time. And then they sat down and did another game.
Yeah, I think they stack some of those other during feast week, and they stack some of those others where they've got stuff lined up to be at 7 and 9 or whatever. But yeah, it's odd this year because it's not even the way it usually runs around. I think it usually would finish like the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving, I want to say.
Yeah.
This is now another Wednesday, but it's going to be odd to have the championship games at 4:00 on a Wednesday afternoon, like Coach said. So a little bit weird.
Yeah, and I also think it's team travel too. It's kind of a reward for if you win the first 2 games, you get out of town early and get back and get your legs back, because a lot of coaches worry about the next game after the Maui and having that. Sometimes it's the Big Ten ACC Challenge the next Tuesday after you come back from the Maui. I don't know what difference a few hours makes, but maybe that's a little bit too. But nonetheless,
the teams usually
have a lot of good teams on their schedule this year.
In Maui, the teams all leave on Thursday, the day after.
Okay.
Except for the one year that I was on Notre Dame's flight and it got canceled and they had to wait around a day or two. But I think this year they may all fly out as soon as possible because of the COVID restrictions.
Mm-hmm. That is true. But Indiana right now has 25 of its 27 games are going to be against power conference teams, unless they play Davidson. But Davidson in A10 is still a very competitive program, and we'll wait to see how Indiana feels their other 2 games here shortly. Also heard on various podcasts that conference schedules might be delayed until the 1st of November. Let's hope they come out a lot sooner than that. But coming up in our third segment, we'll answer your questions. One about how Rob, Race, and Jerome fit together and whether we expect any bubbles in the college hoop season coming up. So stick with us here on the Assembly Call. All right, we're at 42, so 7 some minutes for questions.
Padres got the bases loaded with 1 out, and I might throw up.
Last week, Jared, he was on here, and he was complaining, and it was after the show, and all of a sudden, I'm getting off and watching this. They're terrible, and then all of a sudden, boom, boom,
yeah,
boom.
They came back and won right after that. They scored 11 runs in that game. I was like, their offense can't do anything. The pitcher got taken out after 3 innings, and then they scored 11 runs and won 11-9.
Did they so with the what are we calling it, the Asheville Classic, did they announce anything fan wise? Like have any
I haven't seen anything.
Has anything been talked about in terms of basketball and fans, or are we just assuming that there's not going to be any fans in any arenas?
I think that until the new year, I don't think there's going to be anything.
I mean, that's my assumption, but I didn't know if
some states are saying you can do it, but I think that everybody's going to keep erring on the side of caution.
I would hope they err
inside
on caution inside.
And I think an event like that, it gets hard because it's like you can't. They got the games back to back, so you can't really clear the arena and do anything in between games.
Clean everything, and
at that point, it's like how many people could you legitimately let in from if you wanted to split it up across the 8 schools? I just don't know that you could. I'm just
especially
not sure you could make it work very easily.
Especially because the whole reason they went to Asheville was because they could bubble it. With the arena and the hotel and everything being so close. So I don't think there will be.
I don't know the seating capacity also of the Harrah's Cherokee Center either. So I mean,
it can't
all
be
bets are off.
It
can't be smaller than the Lahaina Civic Center.
Yeah, you're the stat guy, Andy. You're supposed to know that.
I don't know.
I wonder what they'll do for media. Like, will they just have maybe 1 or 2 media people from each school, or
they might have major outlets like like ESPN, AP, and all those, but not do school media and have the school media people do it via Zoom.
We heard
that's lame.
Do the interviews, post-game interviews via Zoom.
When we left,
bow down to the national outlets.
Yeah. Last year, the Purdue people have been really good to us at Delphi Bracketology. They used to have us put in requests on a game-by-game basis, and then they approved us all the time, and they take attendance and all that stuff. They told us last year that you guys get 2 season passes. You don't have to tell us who's coming. We appreciate what you've done, and then they got a hold of us this year and said, we just are really cutting back. And what it is the major outlet. The Lafayette paper will have one. Any national, 3 or 4 national people, but they're going to really limit who is in for football, and that press box and there's a lot of distance. We're thinking that we're not going to get any for our students or our club simply because that, and they were very apologetic about it.
Yeah,
I don't think
we're
they
all
really
dealing
wanted
with this
to do
as
that.
best we can. It's
stinks, but
yeah, like a lot of the guys I know who are covering baseball this year, and I know a lot of the Padres guys, they're having to sit at home, not go to the games for the most part, and then when they interview post game, they have to fire up the computer, pull up the Zoom, and
They're like us.
Yeah, the coaches come up
home and then stare at your computer.
it's like usually a coach and 2 players just come and sit at a table and they fire questions out of via Zoom. They get called out and they fire questions. Some well, especially on the road, they're not the media is not allowed to travel on the road in Major League Baseball. So even the radio and TV broadcasters are doing it from their home parks via video on the road. So
yeah,
you just have to make
unfortunately,
do.
is some of that going to stick, Ryan, post COVID, or is it going to go back to?
I don't think so. I think they'll. Maybe it's some papers and stuff, but I don't think so. I think they'll go back. I think there's a value to having them there. And it's been choppy this year. There are times on the radio broadcast you don't know what's happening because they're relying on the monitors of the other team to figure out what's going on the field, and it's hard. It's a lot harder than just being there and relaying the information.
Yeah, they talk through some of that when they were doing the Reds games that way, and they're like, we've got these monitors here that are trying to do whatever, but they just talked about how much harder it is to you can get fooled by a ball coming off the bat that you think is going to go one place, and then you're trying to look back and forth between these different monitors to figure out what you think it is. It's kind of like what a normal crowd is at a game when you hear something, everybody goes like, oh, but then you can't. Just because of where your vantage point is, it sounded good, it looked like it was going to do something, and it was just a lazy fly ball.
Yeah.
Hey, so I just happened to see this on Reddit today. The guy who does hoopexplorer.com, which I think I've used that site for something, but anyway, he just came up with this new lineup leaderboard, and I haven't dug into the methodology or whatever, so I can't vouch for how accurate it is, but it's just kind of fun to look at. And so he basically rates the best 5-man lineups in the entire country and then rates them kind of like Ken Palm, but for lineups. And so obviously schools can have multiple entries in there if they have a bunch of really good lineups. Which do you think was the top rated Indiana lineup and where did it come in at?
Race Thompson and Jerome Hunter. No. I don't know.
So it was Al Durham, Armand Franklin, Justin Smith, Trace Jackson Davis, and Joey Brunk.
Oh, wow.
I'm assuming it must have been weighted very heavily towards the Bankers Life games. That was the number 52. And actually all 3 of the lineups included Al, Justin, Trace, and Joey Brunk, which I thought was kind of interesting. So I have no idea what the methodology is, and find it hard to believe that you wouldn't have some Jerome and Race in our best lineups based on what we actually saw.
Maybe they didn't have enough minutes to qualify.
It's possible.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
I would question the one that. How many minutes did the first one have? Does it not say on there at all? How many they have? Because just given the amount of time that Franklin tended to play, maybe it was early in the season when he was playing more, but once conference play got started, he was hardly playing at all.
He had some big bursts though.
He did.
He did.
For his minutes played, he put in some points.
And if it was one that was really used a lot at the beginning of the year, which it may have been when Rob was out and Devontae was hurt and. You could very easily see that being a lineup they used against some of the.
He's a big part of Florida State too.
So if they don't adjust that for competition or whatever, that speaks to
that's
methodology, I guess. Yeah.
Hey, Jared,
I think it's adjusted for competition. I'll have to look into it and see what it's about.
Breaking news here, and I've just found the tweet to verify it, or the article to verify it. Greg Marshall of Wichita State is currently under investigation for allegations of misconduct. Who has been predicting that
you
would
are?
happen?
Oh, you are ready for the victory lap. You've been ready for this victory lap
6 years.
for 7 years.
I've been saying there's a lot of bad stuff behind the scenes because people are always like, "Why don't they consider Greg Marshall? Why don't they?" There have been stories behind the scenes about that guy, and I've
heard, this abusing players, mistreating administrative staff? What's his thing? Generally.
I can't say.
Married to his wife.
Because there's somebody I promised very much that I would not even allude to what it was, but it's bad. And it's been rumored. It's going to come out now, but so we can talk about it once it comes out. But
okay.
Yeah, it's been that way since right after he got there. And here's the thing. When you win,
Yeah.
they allow you to do more and bad things than when you lose. And when you're not at the top of your game, that's when this kind of stuff comes out. So
I don't know.
that's
I
all.
wouldn't know
I'll say
anything.
about it.
Indiana fans wouldn't know anything.
No,
about
wouldn't
that.
know anything about it. No, we've never dealt with that. But yeah, I mean, it's funny because that was kind of a running joke for a while on the show. Every time the coaching job would open up, or the last time we talked about the coaching job potentially opening up a few times, and I would always say no to Greg Marshall. Everyone's like, "Why? He's so successful." Because there's some bad stuff there.
Okay.
I'm just glad that I'm vindicated.
Yeah.
You're never wrong.
Never wrong.
He never would admit it.
It's always been the Asheville Classic. They just misnamed it when it was out west.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The Maui Jim Asheville Invitational.
Yeah, but I do have to play this for you, and with all sincerity. On this thing, it does seem to have proven you right.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't hear it. Did you play the I'm usually
We're
proven
not
right?
here.
Shoot.
Drops.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't have my right microphone. Okay, hang on. I'm all discombobulated because I didn't do this right way. Here we go.
Time has proven me right on virtually everything.
There you go.
It's not my fault, guys. It's not my fault.
I pretty
let's do
much
this
have
last
an
segment.
opinion on everything.
I do. Yeah. Was that from Kent Sterling's show?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought I recognized that voice.
Yes,
in
it
that.
was.
All right, we ready for this? We'll start out with the Rob, Race, and Jerome together. Patrick's question. Valerie has a question about the bubble, and then who would you like to see IU pick up as a non-con opponent from Jeff? We've kind of talked about that a little bit, but we'll end on that. And we have about 9 minutes. So here we go.
Cool.
This is Tim Priller, and I never miss an episode of the Assembly Call.
Welcome back to the Assembly Call. I'm the coach, Brian Tonsoni, here with Ryan Phillips, Andy Bottoms, and a very special guest, Jared Morris, joins us this evening. Remember, you need to be subscribed to our email newsletter. We send out a weekly IU news roundup even during the off-season, and after every game, we send out a detailed post-game analysis. Just text IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. That's IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. It's now time for our mailbag. All questions were submitted via our private IU basketball discussion community, which can be found at assemblycall.com/community. And fellas, this comes from Patrick. We talk a lot about the impact of a healthy Rob, Race, and Jerome, but we do so individually. What about when we think about those three playing together? How can healthy versions of those three together make each other better? Who wants the first shot at a healthy three players that have had injuries in the past?
Go ahead, Jared.
I mean, I think if Indiana plays at its best this year, you're going to see a lot of those three guys on the court together. You know, and obviously then you would put Trace in there at the 5, and then you've got another spot for Christian Lander or Al Durham. And, you know, I think, look, you're going to be rotating those guys around, but you need those three as part of your rotation that you count on every game, because Rob is your point guard and the guy with experience. Race is your best kind of interior banger, dirty work guy. He can pick up the tough defensive assignments and kind of ease some of that pressure off of Trace. And then, you know, for all we know, Jerome could end up being the team's most dynamic scorer this year. Like, he's got that kind of potential. So, yeah. And I think they fit well together. You know, when you have Race and Jerome on the court, obviously Jerome is more of a perimeter oriented guy. You know, Race kind of goes down low and does the dirty work. But if we see the idealized version of Race that can actually step out and make a shot, you know, who can post up a little bit is Jerome. So you can really kind of do some different things with those guys. And we've seen Rob be a guy who, when he's right, is really aggressive getting into the lane. And that can either create shots for Jerome, create little dump offs for Race. So, I mean, those three guys can do a lot of things together. And if Indiana is going to be at its best this year, you're going to have to see them playing a lot together and healthy.
You know what I would say, Jared, is that, and I know we saw a little bit of better defense from Jerome during the season. We'd see like a 5-possession stretch where he looked really good, and then the rest of it not great. But again, we got to see a healthy version of him. All three of those guys are two-way players when they're at their best, too. They can help out on both ends. Race can rebound. Jerome rebounded pretty well in some games last year. Rob is a fantastic defender when he's right. I mean, those are guys who help you out on both ends. They're not one-trick ponies. And so, and they do, as you sort of alluded to, they do multiple things as well: rebounding, shooting, maybe posting up a little, all that. So that is why it's so important to have those three guys. And yeah, they fit well together on the floor. I agree with you. I think that those three guys and Trace, and then you can basically pick your other guard if they're all healthy and playing right and playing well. That's your core right there, along with Trace.
I think the defense that you mentioned, Ryan, I mean, Rob and Race are arguably your two best defenders when everything is everyone's at their best, and then potential floor spacing. And we talk about that with Jerome being able to get a higher percentage. Race gives that threat, at least at times has been able to do that. And Rob, you think back to the Ohio State game where he really got off to a good start and shot the ball well. So I think they're able to, as you said, help on both ends as a collective.
The interesting thing about all three, if healthy, is we're going to see if they're going to reach their potential. We've seen Rob play really solid games, but he's had long stretches of injuries. We've seen Race take a tumble after playing well in the first half against Michigan State, and we know Jerome's on the recovery from what he had to deal with as a freshman. So we've seen glimpses of it, but I think if they're all healthy together, they also help each other. Jerome can be our best shooter. Rob can pick up the pace and be a creator by getting into the lane and kicking out to a Jerome. You mentioned the idea that Jerome can post, and maybe if we do allow Race to shoot the three, which he has good form, that he can stretch a little bit more than what we've had defensively against us. So if all three are healthy and they get close to their potential, I think that's nothing but good for Indiana. So next question, Valerie asks, has anyone heard if basketball will be played in a bubble or will there be any fans? We know the MTEs are in a bubble-like situation. There has been a little bit of discussion about the NCAA tournament maybe going to something like that, depending on where everything is with the COVID. Do you think you'll see any of that pop up in the season as a response to what's going on, Jared? Bubbles during the season?
I don't know that they'll need to as much because so much of the conference season is going to be played, between the end of the first semester and the beginning of the next semester. So you're going to have guys kind of there on campus by themselves and that will help. I can't imagine the logistics of actually trying to do that with college students. If they could do it, great, but I just don't really see how it's possible, especially if they don't already have kind of some plans, in the works now. I mean, again, they may not need it based on when the season is going to fall.
Yeah, a couple of leagues I saw look like they were basically, if you were set to play a home and home against somebody, you were going to go to one place and you're going to play both your games over the course of a weekend. I think Conference USA is one that was talked about. I want to say the Big Sky maybe was the other.
That'd be kind of fun.
So they talk about doing that. Now I don't know that you're actually like getting your home and home in that scenario, which in theory may not matter because you'd play if you're playing a team 2 games, you're playing them both over that course of time, and then you're kind of together for that period, and then it moves on to another one. I don't know that I see the Big Ten doing that, but that's at least the way some conferences are trying to do it. But I would think at a minimum, you're into 2021 before you'd have fans of any kind there, but you never know what might happen.
We're under a minute, and I'll give you a quick response question from Jeff. Who would you like to see IU pick up? They got 2 spots open for non-conference. Quickly, who would each of you like to see IU schedule?
Cupcakes. Get the freshmen some time. The rest of the schedule is hard enough.
No Kentucky.
Yeah.
No, I'd say cupcakes too. Regional cupcakes.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Do you get like a Ball State and Indiana State or Evansville, somebody like that?
I wouldn't mind. I'd be careful, Indiana State. I think they're going to be pretty good. I'm a little biased because my son was there for a while. But IUPUI, I'm with you guys. Let's get some easier schools. They had Western Michigan, which possibly could bust, scheduled before the COVID. Maybe someone like that. I don't know if Nebraska, Omaha. That's quite a drive. That's not close, but yeah, regional cupcake sounds good to me.
Nebraska's a regional cupcake. Play them again.
That's true.
That's it. We're done. No more questions.
Okay, so that'll do it for this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, Join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for producing most of the music you hear on the show, and thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again next Thursday night.
Take it from the green light himself. Keep your elbows in, eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Here I come, Mrs. Stansoni.
The green light. I like that.
The green light. Hey, did you guys talk about Devontae or Duran? Who you think will have the?
Yeah, in the first segment.
What was
we
the
all said
consensus?
Devontae, I think.
Yeah.
Just because European ball, up tempo, shooting, guard play.
If I told you Duran was going to be healthy for like 6 years, would that change? If
the issue is his
guaranteed
foot
health.
The issue for me is his foot speed. Because they play faster and they spread it out in Europe more. So it's more about where he's playing, you know. If he was healthy and they had another Big Ten season, I'd say Duran. But playing in Europe, it's an open game with a lot of movement, and it's just gonna be tough. But yeah, if he stays healthy, he has a chance to be very good. I mean, he has a lot of ability. It's just he gets hurt too much, you know.
Yeah.
And even when he's healthy, he's hurt. You know, I mean,
the pick and pop game is so big around the world, you know, with your bigs. So, you know, I do think he'll play for a few years because you can't teach size, you know. And
it's more than size. He's got skill.
And I think his passing ability, Jared, is really could help in the European style and some of that too. He's just not as fluid as I see the game going, and I wish that we still had the backup center as a focal point. I miss that type of basketball where you force double teams and you have kickouts and all of that stuff, but it's kind of going by the wayside.
I would watch a reality show of Duran Davis in Ireland playing professionally.
Walking into one of those pubs where he's got to like duck down and he's got to be bent over to get a mug of beer.
Yeah, like, you know,
real
like
small.
And I'm sure, and Tyler Tackman did a really good article on Inside the Hall, and I'm sure it's going to be like such a culture shock for him going there. But he has such a personality and is so outgoing that I'm sure like within days, you know, he's going to be, you know, he's going to have friends and be down hanging out at the bars and just being like the big gregarious guy that he is. So
good deal.
Brian, you look really serious. Like you're contemplating.
I'm watching Padres
questions.
right now. Padres are on right now, dude.
Okay.
How they doing? Do you need to get off and
yeah, I'm
bring
gonna
some
leave
luck?
in just a second. It's 2-2 right now, top of the third.
What game is this?
This is game 3, so if the Dodgers win, it's over.
You can tell I'm really engaged in sports right now.
Yeah. It's runner on second for the Dodgers, no outs. Tatis just made an amazing stop, and then he didn't have a chance to get the guy, and he still threw it to first, and it got by the first baseman.
It's a shame. Well, it's good to see you guys.
Yeah,
good to have you.
Had to hop on here. It's always good to be here. I'm ready for some games.
Yeah, I'm curious when the Big Ten will actually release any kind of scheduling stuff.
When's the first football game? The 24th, right?
24th that weekend.
There's still
a couple
like
weeks.
3 weeks to wait.
Yeah, 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a little concerned listening to Norlander and Parrish about cancellation of college basketball games. They seem to think that there'll be a good amount of cancellations, you know, and I get that and I understand that, but I'm in the mode now where let's go, the schedule's out, let's play. But they said the reality of college football, 24 to 25% of the games have been canceled and not everyone's playing yet. And then you got the NFL situation. So the reality is there's going to be some cancellations and it just worries me, the Big Ten, it's 21 days off. With the testing protocols and everything, if you do get a positive test in season, and boy, that's then you got another 10 days back to normal. So you're kind of trying to build up a little bit of cushion mentally for I'm going to be excited to have games back, but
yeah, and the resumes could be all over the place.
Oh my gosh,
sharing resumes is going to be just insane.
Yeah, I mean, how do you think of it? Do you end up getting penalized additionally because you just didn't play enough to whatever? Which I think would probably be reasonable if you wanted to do it that way. But as soon as.
But it could be out of your
team
control
gets
too.
Potentially left out. Yeah. Well, yeah.
I mean, you could be the one Big Ten team where everyone happens to get, quarantined the time they're playing Indiana, and instead of playing 20 games, you play 11 games, and maybe it's all the bottom guys that unfortunately have to face that when you play them. It's going to be an interesting bracketology situation.
Hey, but at least there will be bracketology. Hopefully.
Yes. I definitely think there will.
All right, Dodgers took a 3-2 lead. I got to go before I melt down.
My prediction, Tatis home run. Next inning, Tatis is going to jack one.
He just
I'm
struck
going
out.
to
He struck out with the bases loaded in the last inning, so I don't know.
Okay, well, maybe 2 innings.
Hey, it'll be just like last week. Everything will turn around as soon as you get off the show, and things will.
That's right.
All right, I'm shutting it off now, so
energies.
it starts to happen before they get too many more runs.
Okay.
All right.
Later, guys.
All right. See you, Ryan.
See you, Ryan. What else is going on?
Man,
it's about the same for everyone. Then, okay, make me feel better.
Yeah, no, things have been busy here, but good busy.
Good deal.
Good busy. We launched our app, by the way. So one of the projects I've been working on, some people might know. So we've got this notebook. It's called the Thinker's Notebook. And we've been building an app for it, and we launched an initial app with the notebook, which is just kind of real basic. You just take pictures of your notebook and share them and stuff. But we put together like a full-fledged note-taking app. It's similar to Evernote, but it has some different kind of features and does some different things. It's quite cool. So if you have an iPhone, you can go check it out. It's called the Thinkers app.
Cool.
If you are someone who endeavors to be a better thinker and someone who likes to kind of save your ideas, capture your ideas, share your ideas, and this will be a good app for you. Yeah, it's an iPhone app, Jeff. We don't have one on Android, but this is a startup here in Dallas that I became a part of about a year ago. And so that's part of the reason why I haven't been on the show as much. That's one of the reasons. The main reason is, my wife being pregnant and the challenges that can bring. Yeah, just some extra work on some of these projects I've been working on, but fun to finally have this out there. So yeah, go check it out. Cool. Thinkers app. I'll put the link in here so you can see it.
Moose is getting married in a week.
Hey!
Don't forget to wish him luck.
That is awesome.
It's been nice knowing you, Moose.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I think I'm going to try to make it to the ceremonies.
Are you?
Yep.
Is it a socially distant ceremony?
I think he's doing it. I'll just sit in the back, but I'm going to go and wave to him and cheer him on and
that's awesome. Congratulations.
Sing the fight song when he comes out.
Heckle him from the back row.
Heckle him from the back. Moose. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
He's exploring alternative venues now as this.
Yep. He's sending me a new save the date with the different date.
Yeah. Joel's asking about hot bridesmaids. Yeah.
And open bar.
Yeah. Moose is.
Hey, if anyone in the chat mob wants to crash the wedding, I have all the information for a small fee. We could tailgate. I'll bring the bar. We'll just be set up right outside.
You can't tailgate at football games, so you might as well tailgate at the wedding, right?
Yeah.
Can you tailgate? Are they allowed?
No, they're not allowing.
No,
We're tailgating in our backyard. My son and I are going to set up the whole tailgate stuff, fire pit, and the bar for two of us, and load it up. And
hey,
the TVs work outside. DirecTV will work outside, so we've already tested it out. And
virtual tailgating, just get everybody on Zoom.
There you go.
Be in your backyard.
I've always thought that we should do a live game, but the problem is the timing. Like you get the broadcast at one time in Texas when I'll get it 2 or 3 seconds later.
Yeah.
I don't know how you would sync that up so that we're really doing virtual commentary during the game. I think that would be a cool thing, but Oh,
that'd be fun. Like turn down the announcers and then we just announce the game.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But even like those times when I've signed on and it's a minute or so to go and you're watching right there.
Yeah.
Like either I'm ahead of you or you're ahead of me one way or the other.
Yeah, because a lot of times I'll be watching on YouTube TV, which will be delayed from the actual TV feed.
Right.
So yeah, you'd have to
see
get
in our house. It's even delayed in our house because
Yeah.
we have the Wi-Fi direct TV, so the upstairs is direct wired. And so when Brent's watching it upstairs, he'll yell when a basket goes in like 3 seconds later. I'm like, I tell him to shut up so I don't.
Cool.
So
Well, it's good to be here. I'm hoping I'll be on next week's show, and then I think the week after that we're going to have Ken Bykoff on, talk about his book, and then we'll just keep inching toward the season. There's not a whole lot of new angles to take talking basketball right now until maybe there's some recruiting news or something. So at least we got some scheduling news this week.
Yeah.
Which was nice.
Yeah, you always just hope you get one little nugget out there a week. And
just give us something.
I keep looking at my Indiana list on Monday and Tuesday. Please have something pop.
Give us, but something good. Like we don't want anybody getting arrested or.
Boy, after those years back, remember those years when it was all you're talking about was that stuff, and now it's just a little bit of a drain of what to talk about.
Years, I was thinking about him. What is Crean facing this year at Georgia? Is he going to be under pressure at all, or is this just kind of they don't care about basketball and they're just going to give him 4 or 5 years and before they even pay attention to him?
I don't know what they. I mean, they lost Anthony Edwards, obviously, but I don't.
Yeah,
know
they didn't
what
really
else
capitalize on him while he was there either.
No, not so much. No. So I don't know if he's got any other new recruits, or I feel like they were losing somebody else that was decent too.
Crump?
Yeah, 3-Man Weave has him 12th in their preview.
Yeah,
in the SEC. So I don't know if he's facing any pressure at this point, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
things are going particularly well. Yeah, it looks like they got a handful of like role player guys back, but I think Rayshawn Hammonds, I think that's the guy I was thinking of. And Crump they lost to. Yeah, they lost 5 guys on here. This doesn't have their scoring, but they do have. He's got some transfers. He's going the transfer route. He's got a Virginia Tech guy, George Mason guy, Stony Brook, a couple JUCO, 3 JUCO guys coming in. Holy jeez. So,
well,
I don't
they
think
were 319th in 3-point shooting and 255th in turnover percentage. It's not going to get it done.
Yeah, I think schools are going to be patient with all this stuff too this year, unless
that's true.
Because it's just.
Yeah. Well,
unless they really wanted to run a guy out and they could use this year as an excuse. But I think with buyouts and everything like that, I think you run the risk if you run somebody out of really painting your program unless it's Greg Marshall.
Yeah, no, that is true. It's not going to be a normal year at all for stuff like that. So, well, give coaches time. You'll be happy, right, Coach?
For what?
More patience with coaches. More time for them to put their system in.
Absolutely. There's a few coaches that are jackasses that I don't like, but most of us really work hard, and I know everyone is trying to win games despite being bad.
Are there any coaches that you legitimately wonder if they're actually trying to win games?
No, there are a few with some of their decision making. Yeah, it's just like everything. There's bad everything in every profession. But yeah.
Oh man,
got to give people time.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Well, thanks for holding down the fort, fellas.
Oh man, that's the least we can do. We know.
Yeah,
we know things will smooth out here shortly, and we're filling in. And
I don't know. We've got a 4-year-old now. We kind of feel that everybody's like we've got our systems, we've got everything kind of going. Now we're just going to drop another bomb right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So it'll be fun.
And it'll be beautiful and wonderful, and you'll adapt, dude.
Yeah. Exactly.
The only mistake you made there was thinking that you're
launching a new app.
Yeah.
You're just launching a new app in the family. It's just like
that's right. That's right. We can't. We're trying to decide names, so it's going to be a boy. I don't know if I told you that, but it is gonna be a boy. My favorite name for a long time has been Victor, which I'm sure that there's some attachment to that just because of Victor Oladipo, but I also just really genuinely like the name. But my wife does not like that name, so that one's not.
Albert.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's her thought on that?
No, I try to slip in some Indiana names, but she's savvy enough to know which ones are.
What if you went Graham and you didn't go Greg? You went with Graham.
That's true. That's true. I didn't think about that.
There you go.
Uwe.
Yeah.
Hey,
okay, so
I saw Jim Cruz speak Saturday at a basketball clinic. Oh my gosh, I could do a whole hour show on the stories he told. But
hey, if no news comes out, Coach, next week we're going to take it.
It's a Jim Cruz story. But he talked about Uwe Blob, and they were all in the coach's office. And Knight picks up the phone and calls Dean Smith at North Carolina. Says, "What do you do with the 7'2" guy who can't catch?" And all of a sudden, Knight got real serious, and then he said, "Okay, thanks," and hung up. And then Knight changed the subject, and Cruz was looking at everyone, and no one. Why didn't he share what happened? So the next day, Cruz was with Knight alone. He goes, what did Dean Smith? Can I ask what did Dean Smith say? He goes, yeah, we don't recruit 7'2" guys who don't catch. And Knight just was like, okay. Man, that was a good hour of my time. One, being an Indiana fan and seeing someone who played on the championship, seeing, we had good coaches. We had 4-hour session.
Yeah.
Shrewsbury, the assistant from Purdue, was there, and now I know how they run their handoff action. They call it swivel. I'm gonna put that out on a coach's corner when we play Purdue. But he showed a lot of Boston Celtics action, which was nice. We might be running some of that a little bit at Western, but Jimmy Cruz, man, he had me rolling with some of the stories. I sent you one of them via email, but just a really quality guy. As we know, a lot of Indiana guys are quality guys. It was for me and that 76 team, man. It was really a cool afternoon.
Mm-hmm. All right, so the last thing, I don't know if you guys saw, but Steve Alford is now on Cameo. And I haven't.
We got to get Ryan.
I know, but I haven't had a lot of time to kind of look into this. So I'm looking for your advice on what we should submit for Steve Alford, because you only have like 250 characters, so you're very limited on what you can say. And not everybody is going to be like Gene Steratore and really explore the studio space and kind of take what you say and perfect it. So we can't rely on that. But we certainly need to get some kind of dig in there. It had to be. Something about the shot doctor, like, I don't know. So if you have any ideas for what we could send
think about that. Yeah, we got to make it worth it.
Yeah, we got to make it worth it. So
that will be great.
Yeah.
All right. I'll get to thinking on that.
Yeah, think about it.
All right, Jared, I'll get you this file here shortly.
Okay. Cool.
Awesome.
Good to see you guys.
See you, chat mob.
You too.
See you all next
thanks,
week.
everybody. We'll chat next week.
Peace.
All right, later.
Something to do with the calendar suspension.